Welcome to Ginny's, where East meets West, and a slice of Eastern philosophy becomes a part of Western thinking. I'm your host, Ginny Gong. The latest craze in pastime activities is poker, whether one participates in a local game in one's basement or online. It has drawn significant interest as viewers actively engage in some level of participatory decision-making. My first guest will attest to the lure of the sport. He won his way to a place on the Party Poker Millions 3 cruise as part of the World Poker Tour on the Travel Channel. In his less glamorous life, he is a distinguished attorney, selected by Washingtonian Magazine in 2004 as one of the top lawyers in Washington, D.C. A warm welcome to Bill Ho. Welcome, Bill.
Thank you, Ginny.
Well, let's talk about the more exciting part of your life, and that is this interest of yours. Why do you think that poker has become so popular in the last 5 years or so?
Television. It's all television.
Blame it on TV, right?
Well, there's so much exposure now to the game, but I think the real key was the innovation that they used to actually show the players' hole cards. And those are the first 2 cards that are dealt to a player in a Texas Hold'em game. And by having a little camera behind each player's hand, they actually could show you what they had, and therefore that allows you to actually see how they're playing the hand as the hand unfolds, which makes for very fascinating viewing. And it also demystified the game, particularly the no-limit game. And what that meant was that all of a sudden a lot of people realized that they had a chance to actually win these tournaments and the money that was involved as well. And the best example I can give you, 2003 World Series of Poker, main event. The winner, an accountant, won his way online into the main event, first time ever in a live poker tournament. He won it, first prize, $2.5 million.
Wow, that's enough to lure anybody.
I think so.
Including?
Including myself, that's right.
Now, is it an activity or is it a sport, Bill? And I ask that, rather jokingly, but...
Well, my view on that, Ginny, ESPN televises the World Series of Poker, and that makes it a sport.
Well, some people would say that it's not a good influence. It really shouldn't be on TV. And yet, people can turn it off if they want, right? I mean, that's the beauty of it. But you were telling me about the age of many of these that are participating. Let's talk about who's engaged in this sport or activity.
Well, traditionally, the old line pros, they would be all older folks who had actually spent a lot of years gaining experience in actual casinos. I think as part of the recent phenomena, you actually see a lot of younger folks.
Like what age?
Well, you have to be 21 to get into a casino.
Okay.
So you see actually a lot of people, 21, 22, 23, people who may have actually dropped out of school in order to pursue a profession of poker playing.
So I'm hoping that when you see these kids, you're telling them to finish college, right?
Well, actually, when I was on the Party Poker 3 cruise, one night I happened to have dinner with a law student from Canada, and he was explaining to me how he actually could make more money playing poker than he could practicing law. Which I tried to tell you, well, you really should finish your law degree and maybe try becoming a lawyer first.
Have this be a pastime.
And have the poker be a pastime.
Now, poker, is it very much like chess or some sport that really requires a lot of strategic planning?
Yeah, there's a lot of there's actually a lot of math involved in poker. And so you have a lot of decisions that you have to make. The key actually is to be able to calculate your probability of actually winning a particular hand, and that's based on what cards you actually need to improve your hand to what should be the winning hand, what you think is the winning hand. You also have to look at what the pot odds are, and that is the amount of money that's in the pot, both at the present time and going forward, assuming you continue to play the hand. Because what you really want to know is it worth your while to risk your money on this particular pot? And the other thing you need to do is use deductive reasoning to try to figure out what your opponents have. And you do this through a lot of observation, a lot of experience, and you ought to be able to narrow down the possibilities of what your opponent's cards are at any one time. But having said all of that, Ginny...
It sounds so easy.
Well, I mean, there's that skill element that's involved, but you still, at the end of the day, need luck. And I can give you an example of that. If you started off a hand with ace-king, that's a very, very powerful hand. And in almost no circumstance would you fold that hand. On the other hand, in this very same hand, I had a queen-queen to start with. That's also a very powerful hand. there's very few circumstances. In fact, there's only two in which I would fold that hand. That is if I knew you had ace, ace, or king, king.
Right.
In any other situation, I would play that hand. Now, that means you and I probably have all of our money in the pot at that time. Now, who's going to win the hand? Well, it turns out my queen, queen is a 52% chance of winning. Your ace, king is 48%. That's basically 50-50. That's a flip of the coin, and that's where luck is involved.
True.
As to who actually comes out on top.
So, and a lot of patience.
Well, you have to wait. You actually have to play a lot of hands, have a lot of hands dealt to you. You actually will not play the majority of hands.
Now, what is the poker face? Do you have one?
I certainly try to have one when we're playing
What does that
poker.
mean?
But what it really means is a total lack of expression in your face, in your body movements, in the inflection of your voice. What you're basically trying to do is not give any indication to your opponent, who's going to be staring at you the whole time, whether you have a good hand or a bad hand.
I don't think I could ever play poker. I would just be giving everything away, I'm sure. Poker is considered a form of gambling.
Well, in California, actually, it's considered a game of skill.
Okay.
So it's actually not gambling, which is why you have poker.
So is that a lure? Is that a factor as to, that would be something that would interest people, or do you think that it's a discouraging thing?
No, I think what the allure is the fact that you can win a lot of money playing poker.
So it's the dollars.
It's dollars, but it's also a competition. So if you enjoy competition, it's like any other game. There's actually a very clear consequence to winning, and the winning happens to be cash, which is a very good thing for most people. So I think that it's the money, quite frankly.
So this tournament that you participated in, do you pay money to enter it, or is it just?
Yeah. All of these you have to pay money. But
you need to invest money to make money.
That's right. That's right. But this is where I think also technology has played a role with the online poker sites, because basically they allow you to play poker 24/7 as long as you have an internet connection. And the beauty of this is they usually sponsor qualifiers to get into these live poker games. For instance, I invested $25 on an online poker site. I won my way a seat onto the Party Poker $1,000,003 cruise. That seat was worth $9,000, by the way.
Wow.
And the winner of the tournament won $1 million.
Wow. Now, Bill, as very responsible adults, I feel almost like we should be saying to the young adults in the audience, this is not usual. It's not typical, right, that you would, make that kind of money instantly.
That's right. In fact, your chances of winning are actually very, very small.
Okay.
Very small. The tournament I played in, there was actually 547 players. And so only one person out of 547 won. So you figure out what the percentage is. Whatever it is, it's far less than 1%.
Well, very quickly, how is it that you became interested in this?
Well, actually, it was I've always played. I think growing up in college, just having a regular game with friends. But having seen the World Poker Tour on television, and I was sitting there looking at these guys and said, I can do that. So that then required spending a little more time understanding the game, reading up on it, getting practice at it. Particularly No Limit Hold'em is actually there's a lot of decisions that you have to make.
Well, we need to make sure that the audience knows that there's another side to you, Bill. The side that went to college, that got a degree, and is quite distinguished in his field. So you're an attorney. What do you specialize in?
I specialize in corporate law. So I do anything from starting up corporations, partnerships, mergers, acquisitions, pretty much any kind of commercial transactions. I'll do both domestic transactions, international transactions. So I've done a lot of China trade experience. Also do some work with nonprofits.
Right. And I know that you've held leadership positions in some of these nonprofit organizations as part of your volunteer work. But because of all of this effort of yours, you were selected as one of the 780 top attorneys in the DC area. What was the pool? 781?
Well, actually, I was very flattered, very honored to be named by Washingtonian Magazine. There actually turns out to be something like 80,000 something attorneys in the D.C. area.
Too many.
That's why you're always running into an attorney. But what Washingtonian does is they contact, they say hundreds of attorneys, and then ask those attorneys to say which attorney would you trust with your own business And then what they do is they take the responses and take the attorneys with the most recommendations, and those are the ones that get selected to be among the top attorneys. So I'm very flattered that other attorneys would actually think enough of my work to trust me with it.
Well, that's great, really. Congratulations. Let's wrap this up with, I know you do a lot of work with community organizations, in particular 501c3 organizations, but there's so much more scrutiny now, isn't there?
Yes, there is.
On 501c3s. Right. Why?
Well, I think there's just been a lot of high-profile cases in which there have been abuses by some charities, either money ending up in not where it was supposed to go, or actually in someone's personal pocket. So the IRS has taken a closer look. Many states that regulate nonprofits have also done that. I think California has a new law actually enacted this year, which basically has imposed the same kind of corporate accountability provisions as now apply to publicly traded companies as part of Sarbanes-Oxley, which came about after all that Enron stuff that happened. So you see the same kinds of things now being applied to nonprofits.
But sometimes these nonprofits are so small that it's so difficult to always be in compliance. Is the law a little bit more lenient on, some of these smaller, newer organizations?
Well, I think if you're really small, and that would be something under $25,000 a year in gross contributions, yeah, you get a little more slack. But once you start getting over where you have to start filing tax returns, and then even more higher, then you get into more rigorous requirements such as audited financials and that kind of thing.
Well, Bill, it's been great learning about these two very interesting sides of the Bill Ho that's always been my friend for all these years. Thank you for joining me, and we'll be right back. It's time for us to take a break.
My friend wants to know if that girl will go out with him. Pass it down.
Hey, Grandma, ask the girl on the end if she wants to go out with this loner.
The young man wants to know if the girl over there is a donor.
Somebody wants to know if you're an organ and tissue donor.
Yes.
Hey, me too.
Are you a donor? Make sure your family knows your decision so there's no question later.
Made up my mind yet. What are you gonna take?
Algebra.
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 If no one's explained how algebra, geometry, and calculus can improve your future, demand that you be told. Call NACME. We'll tell you.
When you mentor a child, you don't have to be perfect. You just have to be yourself, which, by the way, is pretty good. Do good. Mentor a child. Call 1-877-BE-A-MENTOR.
Welcome back to Ginny's, where East meets West. My next guest has spent her career in the building of communities. She has played a key role in bringing communities' concerns, particularly with regard to health and housing, to the attention of decision makers in her previous position with the White House Initiative on Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders, and in her present position as the Executive Director of the National Coalition for Asian Pacific American Community Development, more commonly referred to as National Capacity. A warm welcome to Lisa Hasegawa. Welcome, Lisa.
Thank you, Ginny.
Those are long names that you're involved in.
DC, City of Acronyms.
What is National Capacity? And tell us, when was it founded and why?
Depending on who you speak to, the history is different. We were officially founded as an organization in 1999. We opened our office in Washington, D.C. when I became the first executive director in 2000. And it was founded by community development corporations, CDCs as they're referred to, that are working in the Chinatowns, the little Tokyos, the little Manilas, the little Saigons across the country. So CDCs are community development organizations. Most are nonprofit 501c3s, as we were talking about earlier, that are organizing communities and providing particularly for the needs of low-income Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders. So we have about 100 member organizations in 14 states across the country. They really came together. They've been many of our organizations have been around for 30 plus years, and they came together in 1999 really in recognition of the fact that there needed to be a voice to really break the model minority myth and to educate elected officials, policymakers, and mainstream advocacy organizations about the needs of low-income Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders.
Let's take this opportunity to talk about debunking this myth that there are, low-income Asian Americans. I'm sure people are out there, wondering about the truth of that, and you know for a fact that there is, right?
Right. Actually, relative to the non-Hispanic white population, there are more, the rate of poverty among Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders is much higher. And it's particularly when you look at subpopulations, particularly Southeast Asians and Pacific Islander and Native Hawaiian communities, the rate is quite a bit higher. And so a lot of the work that we do is around research and providing more detailed data, research reports, and information to policymakers to let them know that when they're making their policy decisions, when they're allocating funding for the highest priority needs, that they don't forget about Asian Americans communities and they're making decisions based on accurate information, that there are really low-income communities that have needs. And it's not only about income either. Even those that are middle income or wealthier also have language access issues, et cetera. And so there are needs across the board, in addition to the fact that there are low-income Asian Americans. And
a lot of our needs may not be so apparent.
Right, and more recent immigrants.
Right.
So.
I know sometimes in the school systems when they just look at test scores and they, sometimes immediately there's this assumption that Asian Americans don't have a need.
Right.
When the reality is it may not be reflected in test scores, but as you mentioned, some language issues.
Right.
What kind of organizations are a part of National Capacity?
Right. So as I mentioned before, we have the whole range of groups that are very large, like Little Tokyo Service Center in Los Angeles, for example. They have, they're doing multi-family affordable housing projects with hundreds of units that are serving the low-income, actually very multi-ethnic community that's in Los Angeles. So it ranges from groups like that to groups that were formed, a year ago or even a few weeks ago, who have found out about National Capacity and the network. They connect with each other as well as, between the larger organizations, smaller organizations. And most of them are fighting gentrification. They're doing a lot of home ownership education and counseling. They're doing financial literacy education. They're developing community centers and youth centers. They're doing the whole range of community and economic development programs. A lot of them are advocating, doing a lot of advocacy on the local level as well.
So coming together is a common voice.
Right.
So that when you have an issue, you're all speaking together on behalf of the community.
Exactly, because while each ethnic group has own particular issues, really as an Asian American and Pacific Islander Native Hawaiian community coming together on the national level, we represent in states like California, we're up to 14% of the population. But in other states, we're very small percentage, and so the political power is just not the same.
True.
And on the national level, we're probably about 4 or 5%. So what I like to say is on the national level for Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders, you can probably get about 76% of our community in about 8 states. And so we're really trying to educate policymakers that particularly in dealing with those 8 states where the largest Asian American and Pacific Islander populations are, that's where we need to focus.
So is National Capacity a hands-on, down there in the community kind of organization, or is more of like a think tank doing research and analysis of issues?
Yeah. There are 4 main things that Capacity does. I wouldn't say that we are the ones that are doing the hands-on work. It's our member organizations. We were created by our member organizations to really promote the work that they're doing at the national level. So we do convenings, so we have an annual convention every year, similar to organizations you're involved with. And we also do regional convenings with member organizations. We just did a series of housing forums in Boston, in San Jose, and in Los Angeles. We're going to be having one coming up very soon, and then we also did one in Chicago. And we also do research, as I said. I have a copy of a report here. The economic needs of Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders in distressed areas. So again, focus on low-income communities. We do a lot of national educational initiatives. We did one on fair housing discrimination, and we also did one on financial literacy, coming up with materials, educating, coming up with resources for our member organizations to use. And we also do a lot of leadership development, and we also do organizational development, training and technical assistance. We have an initiative right now that we're starting up to help organizations, our member organizations, really ensure that they are some of the issues that were brought up earlier around compliance with new laws, et cetera. So making sure that we have strong community-based organizations at the local level. So those are some of the things that we do. So our members do the grassroots, organizing, roll up their sleeves, and we really work in the Beltway, with a lot of the legislators and Congress. We work with the Congressional APA Caucus, for example.
So that's quite a bit of lobbying.
We call it education.
Because I would think, as a nonprofit, we're all limited to X amount of percent of the effort.
Correct.
So you're looking at legislation and making sure that it meets the needs of the community, right?
We do very little lobbying. I really do think that we see ourselves as providing information to policymakers and certainly, again, breaking the myth of the model minority. We do some work on specific pieces of legislation. For example, Congressman Wu recently introduced a bill to designate Asian American and Pacific Islander serving institutions. So that would be similar to the historically black colleges and universities, Hispanic serving institutions, Native Hawaiian and Alaska Native serving institutions. So
you do quite a bit of traveling, right?
Yes, I was in, I think, 5 cities last week. It was quite crazy, actually.
Wow. Well, let's talk a little bit about Lisa, okay?
Sure.
Lisa is 4th generation Japanese American. And Lisa, similar to my first guest, Bill, who dabbled in poker. What does Lisa do?
Oh, gosh.
For fun.
For fun. I think you're referring to our conversation about rock climbing.
Yes.
Which is a new hobby of mine. There's actually a rock climbing gym close to here.
Yeah, I'm amazed. I must miss it all the time. How big could it be?
Yeah, it's called Sport Rock. So yes, that's a new activity, and I actually took diving lessons recently here in Montgomery County. So yes. Some new activities, and I'll be getting married in October, so that's the other extracurricular activity that I've been.
Speaking of getting married, you are another statistic in terms of the Japanese community. I know that the Japanese community really is probably the largest ethnicity that marries outside their own ethnicity.
Right, and so I don't know actually
high number, right? Pretty high percent.
I don't know where I would fall in the statistic because my fiance is Chinese American, so sort of within the Asian American community, but it's true, he's not Japanese American. And I think actually that it's more generational, because I think that my family probably has more in common with a 4th generation Chinese American family than with a recently immigrated Japanese family. So I'm not quite sure where I
think there's
fall
a
in
lot
the
of truth to that.
So Asian American identity has certainly been growing.
Yeah. So. In fact, speaking of this whole Asian American identity, those of us that are involved in community, we're actually creating this identity, aren't we? Because it's non-existent. And with each year, we're defining what it means. What does it mean to you to be Asian American in today's world?
I think it's a complicated. Different days, I feel like I want to take on different pieces of that identity. I think that sometimes I identify as a woman of color, sometimes I identify as Asian American, sometimes I'm representing Southeast Asians and Pacific Islanders and more recent immigrant communities. So I think that it is evolving, and I think that now we are working a lot more closely with South Asian communities post September 11th. We're also working a lot more with Native Hawaiian and Pacific Islander communities because per the census, we're all lumped into one category.
Right.
And so politically...
And just appearance. I mean, people just lump us in.
Yeah, that's true, I would say, for the East Asians. But, you know, there's also the Filipinos and et cetera. So we're such a diverse community, and I think that that's both what's great about my job and also a challenge, because people look at me and, you know, I still get the questions, oh, you speak English so well. And I'm like, you know, I don't want to be offended by that, because clearly there are many. I mean, I think that we need to do a better job in, you know, the United States about, you know, encouraging people to learn many languages. But anyways, I think it's a very diverse community, and it makes my job exciting, and I learn something new every day.
Well, that's a great way to conclude our show. Thank you so much for joining us. That concludes our show for today. My appreciation to Bill Ho and Lisa Hasagawa for being with us. And thanks to all of you for joining us. Stay well, and we'll see you next time.